In example 1, we are going to examine different relationships and determine whether each relationship represents a function. So let's go ahead and read the directions here. It says, example 1, state the domain and range for each relation, then determine whether each relation represents a function. All right, so let's quickly glance at the relationships that we see in examples 1A and 1B. You can see that for each relationship here, there are two boxes with information in between. So if we concentrate on example 1A here, the box on the left contains names of people, and then the box on the right consists of some birthdays. So in order to define the relationship, I need to draw some arrows in for you. Okay, so hang tight. I am going to draw okay, let me do it. Let me just go ahead and draw the arrows, and then I'll talk about how you interpret this. So I am going to draw an arrow from Elvis to January 8th. And then I'm going to draw an arrow from Colleen to January 8th. And then I'm going to draw an arrow from Kaylee to March 15th. And then one last arrow from Marissa to September 17th. Okay, so when we look at something like this, what you need to remember is that the arrow is always drawn from an input to an output. So when you look at this, basically the people, Elvis, Colleen, Kaylee, and Marissa, that's where we're drawing the arrows from. So the people are going to be the inputs. And then we're drawing these arrows to the dates. So the birthdays are going to be the outputs here. Okay, so the way you want to interpret this is, each person is being mapped to their birthday. So Elvis has a birthday of January 8th. Colleen also has a birthday of January 8th. Kaylee has a birthday of March 15th. And Marissa's birthday is September 17th. Okay, the question is this relationship a function? So remember what you need to ask yourself. This bullet point right here in green. Okay, to be a function, every input must have a single output. So let's check. Okay, so if we go down here, okay, if we look at Elvis, Elvis is an input. How many outputs does it have? Well, 1, January 8th. And then if we look at the next input, Colleen, how many outputs does she have? Just 1, January 8th. Kaylee, how many outputs does she have? 1. It's March 15th. And then lastly, the input Marissa, she has 1 output, September 17th. Okay, so this is a function because every input has a single output. You may be concerned because Elvis and Colleen are mapped to the same date. That's okay. Each person has a single output. It's sensible. It's fine for some person named Elvis to have a birthday of January 8th and for some different person named Colleen to also have the same birthday. That's fine. It makes sense. Okay? So it doesn't matter here that Elvis and Colleen are mapped to the same date. Okay, it makes sense that they can have the same birthday. What matters here, this is a function because every input has a single output. Okay, so definitely a function. According to the directions, not only did we need to determine whether this was a function or not, but we need to write down the domain and the range. Okay, the domain is going to be the set of all the inputs. Okay, so it's basically going to be all the people. So to write this down mathematically, these are just people, so we're going to have to list their names. So to write this out, we're going to list their names and we're going to separate them with commas. And there's one other thing we have to do. You'll see this again and again. Anytime you are listing something out. Here we are making a list of the people in the domain, the list of all the inputs here. If you are listing something, and I'll write this over here, if you're listing a bunch of items, you need to put curly braces around those items. So here, we write down the people's names, we separate them with commas, and we enclose the list in curly braces. You don't want to use parentheses or brackets. That means something else. You do not use that for listing. Okay, we'll talk about parentheses and brackets later in this class. Okay, we need to write down the range here. Okay, we need to list out these 3 dates. Okay, so again, we're going to write out the 3 dates. We get, the birthdays here are January 8th, March 15th, and then September 17th. We need to separate them with commas and enclose this list in curly braces. Okay, that's it. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, similar type of example here. We've got the 2 boxes. This time the boxes on the left represent some moms, and then we will draw arrows to the box on the right, the sons. Okay, so again, to define this relationship, I have to draw arrows. Okay, so we're going to draw an arrow from Maria to Benjamin, and then we're going to draw an arrow from Jennifer to Reed, and then another arrow from Jennifer, but this time to Luke. And then finally, we will draw an arrow from Samantha to Max. All right, so here's the relationship. So the way you want to interpret this, remember we draw the arrows from the inputs. So the moms are the inputs here to the outputs, which in this case would be the sons. Okay, so the way you want to interpret this, Maria has a son named Benjamin. Jennifer has 2 sons, Reed and Luke, and then Samantha has a son named Max. Okay, the question, first of all, is this a function? Okay, again, you've got to ask yourself that green statement. Does every input have a single output? Well, if you go down here, let's consider each input and see how many outputs each input has. Well, Maria has 1 output. Benjamin, she has 1 son. Okay, so then when you look at Jennifer, she's a problem because she has more than 1 son. Jennifer is an input with 2 outputs. Okay, so this, Jennifer prevents this from being a function here. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and write not a function because Jennifer has 2 outputs. Okay, so this relationship as defined would not be a function. Even though this relationship is not a function, we can still write down its domain and range. Okay, so domain, we're going to list all the inputs, so all the moms, so list their names, Maria, Jennifer, Samantha, separate their names with commas. And then remember, since we're listing out the names here, we need to enclose the names in curly braces. All right, lastly, we need to do the range here. That's going to be the list of all the sons. They are the outputs. So we're going to make a list of all the sons' names. So Benjamin, Reed, Luke, Max, separate with commas, and then enclose with curly braces. Okay, and that's it for this particular example.